let's move on to transparent artificial intelligence and the Government Alliance, TIGA. And we have John Eichten, the Deputy Commissioner of Minute. We're so thankful that you're here today and looking forward to your presentation on AI. I'm sure this is another one that we'll have solved by the end of the day. While they're getting set up, I'm assuming some of you, probably you hear daily about AI, but I was listening to the radio this morning. They were talking about the Department of War is now contracted with an AI just for non-classified purposes. But I think they chose Gemini, and so it's going to be used for summarizing and I think we all think of the Terminator and building this, indestructible, soldier or whatever. That's not what this is. This is a little less than that. But anyway, so just to open that topic fresh anew, thank you, Deputy Commissioner Eichten, for being here, and go ahead with your testimony.
Thank you. Good morning, Co-Chair Scott, Co-Chair Feist, members of the Commission. Thank you for the opportunity to address the group today, provide an overview of Minute's governance approach to proposed use of artificial intelligence tools by state agencies. For the record, my name is John Eichten, and I serve as Minute's Deputy Commissioner. And Brandon Hirsch, our Government Relations Director, is here with me today as well, helping out with the slides.
Welcome.
Thank you. So TIGA, yes. The word comes from a boreal rainforest in cold weather climates, actually. I thought it was very illustrative acronym to use, but it stands for the Transparent Artificial Intelligence Governance Alliance. And this really started several years ago with the emergence of generative AI technology and around the time of the rollout of ChatGPT. Minute recognized that a different approach to governance was going to be needed, particularly for technology acquisition, in order to vet the potential application of AI technologies by state agencies and the coming integration of AI capabilities into the tools that the state already uses to power service delivery. Many, if not most, if you hear ads on TV for IT tools of any kind, the word AI has been embedded into the marketing for that tool almost 99 times out of 100.
Recording stopped.
Do you want me to continue, Madam Chair?
Let's wait till we get back online.
Sounds good.
We're okay. Go ahead.
Very good? Okay. I think maybe the AI doesn't want me to continue.
Recording in progress.
As I said, what that means per technology tool, that it's AI enabled or it's AI powered, varies greatly. When we talk about AI, we can be talking about a host of different capabilities, everything from generative AI, which has been sort of the rage since ChatGPT, to machine learning, to RAG, to image generation. And so it was going to be important that we had a governance process that goes beyond what it traditionally is focused on, which is security, accessibility, the sustainability of the technology as part of our overall enterprise technology landscape, and to really look at what is being proposed here to use artificial intelligence, what form of AI, and is it being approached in a way that's responsible and with attention to information security, as well as a host of other principles, which I'll get to in another slide. So we established TIGA. It's a cross-functional group. It's to advise Minute and our agency partners on the responsible adoption of AI to improve how we deliver programs and services to Minnesotans. So it's a very deliberate response to what we really saw as the coming power of AI, and to seek to embrace the transformative potential while also creating governance processes and standards to ensure its responsible use. So one of the initial efforts of TIGA was to establish guiding principles that can help Minute and our agency partners recognize the value of generative AI and associated technologies while also ensuring that adoption doesn't come at the expense of safety and security. These guiding principles, as you see here, reflect the importance of privacy and security, transparency, user-centered services, workforce empowerment, and innovation, among others. We also went further than principles to develop policies, standards early in the emergence of Gen AI. Foundationally, Minut's public artificial intelligence security standard ensures that employees understand their responsibilities that really flow from the same data protecting requirements that apply across all of our daily work. They also apply when using AI. The standard allows for the use of these tools with public data, but prohibits use with non-public data while ensuring humans, not AI, are the ones making decisions. The core of the standard rests on security categorization standards, data categorization standards that have been in place and widely accepted for years across the executive branch. It also explains how to use services safely without disclosing non-public information such as PII, usernames, passwords, tokens, keys. It also provides a couple of very simple use cases for how to use AI-enabled services. And of course, agencies may and do impose additional, more restrictive guidelines for use. So this is really an enterprise security standard that creates a baseline from which agencies can add additional requirements in order that fit their unique business needs. So to give you a sense of what the governance, the overall acquisition governance process looks like, take a look at the slide here. We built on an existing governance process through the Enterprise Services Architecture Review Board that, as I said, was already reviewing security, accessibility, the potential for the technology, if there was going to be a need to integrate it with other enterprise tools before the agency went to buy it, and to later find out, oh, Minut can't integrate this with Microsoft Teams or whatever other enterprise tool they wanted to integrate it with. We wanted to ensure that there was an additional check there as well. And so we've layered on this AI review to that process where there's a need for it, right? There's not a large volume at this stage, but it is something we need to build to get ahead of what is likely coming in the future. So that overall process, it's a diverse function of technologists. It's a close partnership with our business partners to address their business needs. New AI capabilities will follow this process, but on the next slide, I'll try to expand a little bit on the additional focus. So we knew early on in the Gen AI revolution, governance would need to have a unique focus for AI. We had asked every agency to identify an AI lead. Someone in this could be someone at a leadership level, it could be someone at more of a middle management level, but someone who could act as a conduit to Minut to understand what is the agency potentially exploring, to understand what other agencies are doing in this space, how they are looking to constrain or to ensure the responsible use of the technology, and to create more awareness around the risks associated with AI-related work, and apply an appropriate level of resource to try and mitigate any of that potential risk and really improve our visibility into what is being explored. I'll give you an example of one application that has been implemented, and we actually won a National Association of State CIO award for, which was really a state award. It wasn't really a Minut-driven or a Minut award, but the Department of Revenue and their Minut team collaborated to develop an AI tool to assess the work product of the legislature. So as bills are being introduced, they need plenty of people time, people power to go through every bill that's introduced and flag it for a potential impact on the state tax code. And then to route those bills to someone within the department who could do a deeper analysis and understand, is there an issue here? Is this something that we need to go visit with a particular legislator about? So they leveraged AI and some Microsoft Power Apps, workflow capabilities to greatly reduce the amount of staff time required to get through that bill review. I say that to give you an example of the type of low to no risk use cases that are being explored right now as really efficiency gains, really productivity gains for the operation of state services. So I'll move on to AI risk assessment. So risk assessments, these are crucial tools, as Senator Lucero, Representative Elkins know, in the IT space and in the security space to that have been in practice for various disciplines for years. Our risk assessment contains questions designed to reveal risks, guide staff toward possible risk mitigation. We view AI tool development and acquisition through multiple lenses of risk management. Several aspects of the key questions relate to the roles of humans in AI in regards to automated decision-making. And inherently, any application of AI that would have automated decision-making is where the most significant risk comes in. And obviously, you all know that. So how do we look at the risk level? How do we categorize the risk level? We actually built off a framework that had been established in the transportation space for connected and automated vehicles. And as you can see on the slide here, established really 5 levels of risk that really speak to the level of autonomy that's being given to the AI to perform certain tasks or process certain information. I will note here, again, we are not aware of any services in state government where automated AI decision-making occurs. So think about that sort of medium to high level, levels 3 through 5. At this stage, that is not an application of that type of AI in that sort of context is not something that is on our radar as Minute. Employee training. I will call back to the guiding principles referenced at the beginning and around the committee, our recognition that the state workforce must be empowered to safely and responsibly use AI. This is something that every organization, every large organization is contending with right now in terms of to what extent do they give sort of standard AI-enabled productivity tools to their employees. There's a cost that's associated with that. There's potentially a risk, especially if your data house is not properly maintained and organized, that data leakage can occur if you're using some of these tools and your data estate is not well managed. But a big piece of it is training employees, on how to use this in a way that can make them more productive without replacing their judgment as human beings. And that is an expectation and responsibility of their job. So we partnered with an organization who's distributed this curriculum in several other states, brought it to Minnesota. It's available through the state's enterprise learning management system. All employees have available to them these modules within the state's learning system on the key principles of responsible AI use. Beyond this training, we offer regular coaching sessions on enterprise AI tools that are available to agencies through our AI Champions initiative. And since this spring, over 4,000 state employees have attended over 40 optional training sessions to better understand this technology. And last but certainly not least, I want to highlight that Minute hasn't been on this journey alone. Since the Gen AI revolution began, we partnered closely with the State Technology Advisory Council, who have advice and guidance and help support state agencies and Minnesotans as we move forward. Some time ago, I want to say 2 years perhaps now, the TAC formed an AI subcommittee to bring intention and focus to this work. That committee is kept apprised of our tools, the development, we've kept them apprised of our tools, our governance processes as they've been stood up, updated on state policies across the nation, as well as developments at the federal level. Further, the subcommittee has included a regular cadence of experts in the AI industry who bring use cases forward, experience, and guidance to highlight new opportunities on how we might improve service delivery in a responsible manner with the aid of AI. So I want to thank Representative Elkins and the other members of the legislature who are members of the TAC for that continued advice, questions, and guidance to ensure we're striking the right balance here in the responsible use of AI. So Vice Co-Chair Scott, thank you again for the opportunity to testify today. From the Minute perspective, there's great potential for AI to improve the way we analyze data, to improve customer service, to improve the impact and reach of our communications, but doing so really requires great care, great and very careful consideration to properly weigh the benefits and the risks. We welcome continued partnership with this committee and others, as well as our ongoing partnership with the TAC to ensure we're moving forward responsibly together on this emerging and likely continually evolving front that is the AI revolution. So, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you for that. And one of my, I have a couple of questions, but one would be, what is the specific, if you can kind of give us a glimpse into this, what are the specific trainings that you're giving government employees to verify that the information that they're getting through generative AI is actually accurate? How do they test it for accuracy?
So, Madam Chair, that's a great question. Ultimately, we train employees that they should not be relying on any information from AI to make a judgment on its own. It can be a highly effective productivity tool in terms of perhaps summarizing meeting notes from a meeting that occurred. But what we tell folks is you don't then get to just hit send and send those meeting notes out to every attendee, because there's a chance that you could end up misrepresenting what actually occurred in the meeting. So the guidance is to take that initial output, to review it as for accuracy. If you don't know whether it's accurate, then this is, it's engaging in some level of research to determine if something is accurate or not. But the application of these tools in its current form isn't done in a way that would lead someone to make a judgment about a certain need or an action. These are the state's use of these tools at this time are really focused on productivity and efficiency gains, not on trying to automate decision-making or information that we're sharing out to the world.
So, thank you for that. And how would the public know if government used AI to produce a public service announcement, for instance? Would the public necessarily know that? Is there anything that you're recommending? Do they have to put some sort of disclosure? What about that scenario?
Madam Chair, we don't have any policy recommendations as the IT service provider agency to the state on, what sort of transparency folks would like to see in terms of how AI is leveraged. I will say, I would guess that almost every press release that most organizations are putting out right now, you can assume there's probably some level of AI that's being involved in that. I'm not speaking of the state government, but it is so ubiquitous throughout the industry now, and I think that it is the idea of using a tool like that to generate a first draft of something that then you're later refining and revising is a good productivity booster. Whether that there would be reason to then require that some sort of AI label or something on a press release that goes out, I think that's a public policy decision that, as operationally focused service providers, I would defer to the legislature on.
Right. Thank you for that. And then I've looked just briefly into what some other states are doing. I know Arkansas, and it says here enacted, this is from NCSL, I think. Arkansas enacted legislation that clarifies who the owner of AI-generated content is, which includes the person who provided data or input to train a generative AI model, or an employer if the content is generated as a part of employment duties. So I think that enters into a whole nother realm of whose data is that? Just like the discussions over healthcare data, is it the patient's healthcare data, or is it the person holding the data? And so do you have any, have you addressed that at all?
Madam Chair, excuse me, I'm a little unclear on the question. I apologize. In terms of
Determining who owns the
ownership
data that's
of
AI generated. When you're feeding it, if you're feeding it in, summarize the November 20th meeting of the XYZ agency.
Madam Chair, thank you. I apologize. I appreciate the clarification. So the data, the output of generative AI tools that are state sanctioned, right? So, which would be primarily one tool right now, which is just part of the standards, part of the Microsoft suite, which is Copilot. So Copilot Chat. which is this is different from the larger Copilot. I don't want to get into the weeds, but it's essentially the same thing as ChatGPT, but it's integrated into some of the Microsoft products, and it is behind essentially the walls of security, of essentially an environment that has been FedRAMP certified, that has been, that follows all the exact same rules as our email system and other capabilities that we have. So if I'm an employee and I say, can ask Copilot Chat to summarize the meeting, the output that comes, the data that is produced from that is state data. That data could be requested via a data practices request. It is not Microsoft's data, that is our data.
Okay, thank you. Member of questions, Representative Elkins.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So a couple of things. Sorry. Thank you, Madam Chair. So when Taiga first came out, I was seeing that and there are a few states where they are passing state legislation requiring this kind of stuff. So I approached Doug Robinson, who is the president of the National Association of State CIOs, and I said, Doug, have you looked at our stuff, and do you think we really need to write a law about that or this, or is Minute already doing what needs to be done? And he said, no, Steve, Taiga is actually, other states are using Taiga as a model for their own policies. And he said jokingly kind of that the one thing that Commissioner Thomas might appreciate is legislation allowing him to require the state agencies to do it. So I brought that back to Commissioner Thomas, and he said, no, I'm not having any issues. The agencies are pretty much complying with this. And I don't think that it really, at this point at least, that we should or need to write anything into state law, because everything is changing so rapidly that I think the states that are trying to codify this right now are just creating a huge ongoing burden for themselves in terms of having to continually update their statutes as the technology changes. So I think we're in a good space right now. With what's going on here, I am a member of the TAC AI subcommittee, and have been regularly attending the meetings as well. Plus the national group of state legislators from around the country that our Representative Bonner and I are a member of, that regularly compares notes across states. Probably it's a commission on cybersecurity, data privacy, and now AI. Senator Lucero was once a participant on that group as well. Most of our programming right now is AI related, and so it's giving us a good opportunity to stay on top of this. And I'd say the consensus among most of us that there are relatively few use cases that are really ripe for legislation, and the ones that are ripe, things like deep fakes, revenge porn, we've already passed laws governing those. So, and then the last thing I'd point out is that Senator Rest has actually kind of started an initiative to use a variation of generative AI called retrieval augmented generation, to basically where you would train a model on the state statutes, the research papers that have been done by House and Senate research staffs, to create a generative AI model that would make us and our staffs more productive in terms of crafting legislation and checking it against what's already there in law, finding conflicts, finding ways to shortcut the process to make all of us and our staffs more productive. And I think that work is ongoing as well.
Thank you. And I'm not sure that we shouldn't codify some of this, but if there's some like general framework that we can do, I think it might be worth doing. Senator Lucero, I think, was first.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Deputy Commissioner. One of the remarks that you made caught my attention, is that you had asked the different agencies to put forward a representative to speak to AI in their agency. And that got me to thinking, I can recall, it's been a number of years now, but if I'm thinking back 8, 10 years ago, there was resistance by some agencies when it came to Minute of taking out Minute, just by means of background for those who aren't aware, Minute was brought forward as a way to have shared services instead of each agency having their own IT staff and their own servers and their own technology systems, et cetera, to have Minute as a shared services entity, and then these agencies as a way to enhance productivity. But there was resistance by a handful of agencies to not give up their own technology and processes. So my question is, with that background, when you had requested a member from each of the agencies to work through a collaborative effort across the board for state government, did you encounter any resistance, and or are there any agencies that are not putting forward a representative and or are engaging in duplicative effort that you're doing?
Deputy Commissioner.
Madam Chair, Senator Lucero, great question. The short answer is there has not been resistance. There may be a couple entities out there who maybe have yet to name someone to the community of practice. I'd have to check the list, but in general, the interest has been really high. And it comes from across the board. There are folks who are on that group who are excited about the transformative power of AI, and there are folks who are really scared about where this could go, and they want to get their foot in the door from the beginning to help shape what that could look like. And that was really the intent of the group, to allow all voices in, to learn from each other, to be transparent about where we're going and what we're trying to guard against. So, and just stepping back, I appreciate you raising, some of the challenges there, because you were around during those early days of IT consolidation. One thing I would just say is that since the pandemic, I would say the recognition of the power of unified enterprise IT has really been cemented. There's a clear understanding now that if one was to propose, let's all go back to each agency having, their own data centers, or if you want to call it a data center, more like servers in a closet, and paying for their own laptops and, only getting new laptops when there's some leftover money at the end of the year. So now you finally have a machine that isn't so slow that you go crazy doing your work. Like we are now at a level of IT service that is enterprise class, and it has required some additional investment from agencies that I would say were underfunded in IT and kind of operating on shoestring and bubble gum and baling wire. But now that type of resistance isn't there. I would say, if anything, there's more of a desire for us to lead in this space, and which is just something that we want to balance as we are the IT service department. So some of the questions that get into like environmental impact, we need to have our partner agencies involved in that as well. That's not Minute's bailiwick per se, but we want to be a leadership force on the topic to bring those voices together. And along with the TAC, we feel like that we've made good progress in that.
Members of the commission, I'm going to cut this short because we still have another topic to get to. We have a lot of testifiers on that next topic, and I want to be fair to them. They've been waiting here all day. So if we can save our questions, we would love to have you back again. Deputy Commissioner, thank you for being here and for this very good information. We do have one more testifier on this. Mr. Neumeister, if you can be brief.
Co-chairs, commission members, Rich Neumeister. It's important to know that AI is happening on the local and state level. And it's been happening for a great number of years in its embryonic way of what we call predictive analytics, predictive policing, whatever it may be. You've already heard of Exxon selling Draft One and all that. So it's all over there. If you look at the testimony of Minnog and myself, you'll see some things that you, as the legislature, can do. My experience has been you push a bill in and they come out of the woodwork. So if you want to get an idea of what's happening, put in some bills that bring in some accountability and transparency. One of the things that I want to give you as an example, in 2019, there was discussion about putting scores on juveniles that Ramsey County was pushing with the sheriff, Troy's office, and all that. The public knew about it. They went back and said, you're not going to do that. So one of the things that's so important is transparency and accountability, that these folks had hard questions to talk about. I served on for 22 years on the CrimNet board. That's the one that designed all the criminal justice databases, connections, and all that. And there were one or two of us who were appointed to sort of sometimes be the conscience of the public. This TEGA board, I can see legislation, rather than a bunch of techies and government types, let's have some public members on there to ask those questions. And Madam Chair, just in comment, is there are a lot of things happening that the public may not know about. One of them that the cybersecurity people know about is that there is discussion right now of having a single password and a single identifier for residents to interact with their government. And I'm sure the cyber, but also that has AI implications too. So it is, thank you very much for having the hearing on these comments.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Neumeister. I'm sure this is not the end, but only the beginning.